Great, so I'm now recording, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a screen share mode. And the first thing that I want to show you is in the Pressbooks interface, when you come and log in, I'll show you the whole step. First, you'd come to your instance of Pressbooks. The University of Houston Libraries it's uhlibraries.pressbooks.pub, and you'll see a landing page that looks like this that Ariana and her colleagues have configured. You'll see an ability to browse a catalog or to get started. You can learn more about this program. And if you already have an account, you'll also see a sign-in button in the top right. When you click sign in, it'll ask you for a username or email address. Hopefully you'll know your username or email address. If you've forgotten your password, there's a little lost your password link down here. And if for some reason you can't log in or you don't have a user account, you can talk with Ariana or one of her colleagues and they can get you an account to use this network. So the first thing we'll do is we'll log in. Once you log in, you'll see the ability to click either My Books or to click Admin. When you click Admin, many of you will see a link that says My Catalog. From the My Catalog screen, you'll see any books that you are currently a part of. I think almost all of you should see a book that says Test Book. And you can visit the dashboard to see this book and understand this is basically the Pressbooks user interface for Pressbook. I'm going to demo a couple of things that I don't need you to follow along with, but I'm going to show you how you can do them if you want to do them yourself in the future. The first thing is from My Catalog, you also have the ability to create a new book. So while you have a test book, you may want to make your own book in the future. To do that, you just click Create a New Book. It's going to tell you, here are the books you already belong to, in case you've forgotten that you already have this book. And then it's going to say, give your book a URL. It needs to be at least 4 characters with letters and numbers only. And it also says it cannot be changed, so choose carefully. If you really need to change it, your network manager can change it for you, but we do advise that you pick a good URL to start with. I'm just going to call my book Testing PB and Pressbooks Test Book. And you can also choose at this time, do I want to make my book public or private? For now, I'm going to start with it private. And I would click Create Book. What will happen is Pressbook will just take a second and it will create a new book for me, and I can use this book as a sandbox or to actually create a book. When I come to Admin, you'll now see, it's running a little slow because I'm screen sharing and recording. You'll now see from my catalog, I've got this new book that I just created, and that would appear there. The other thing that you can do is that many of you will say, you know, I don't need to create a book from scratch. I found an openly licensed book out there that I'd like to adapt or to adopt. And so one of the features that we support is cloning a book. I was just the other day, University of Texas Arlington, I know they're maybe rivals, but here's a book that they published that I think is really great. It's called Creating Online Learning Experiences. Matt Crossland was the editor, and he remixed this book. And you can see from this book that it has a Creative Commons license. What I would do then is I would grab this URL, I'd come back to the Pressbooks interface, and I'd say, here's the book I want to clone, and I want to clone it to your network at the URL Online Learning, and I'm going to click the Clone It button. Now what Pressbooks is doing is we built an API for books, and our API is going to UT Arlington's network and saying, is there a book here? And it says yes. And it says, is it public? It says yes. Does it have an open license? It says yes. And it says, okay, great. Give me the book. And so what we're seeing right now is that your University of Houston network is now creating a copy or a clone of this book. And it's going to go out and get the metadata. It's going to go out and get all the chapters. And it's going to get all the images, all the interactive pieces. It's going to make an exact copy of that book locally so that you can edit and revise it. Especially for those of you who are working in open, this is a really nice way to take someone else's open and licensed resource and improve it or localize it or personalize it for the needs of your students. And you'll see here, I've just made a copy of that book now. The original is still at UT Arlington. I haven't affected their original, but I've made my own copy on the Houston network that can now be viewed or edited or altered or changed. So here's the local UH copy. It took me just under 2 minutes from start to end, and I have a totally editable copy. And if you want to note, it'll say in this book, we've given attribution already. We said this book is a cloned version of this other book that's linked from Mavs University Press. So that's one of the ways that you can get content in quickly. Another thing that we could do if you wanted to is come to an existing test book and we could say, well, I have a shell and my content is out there, but it's in Word document form or it's in EPUB form. So if I were to come to Tools and click Import, Pressbooks will also allow you to import from a wide variety of sources. If, for example, you found an EPUB at Project Gutenberg, like let's say you teach literature and you wanted to make a Jane Austen reader, you could go grab the Jane Austen EPUB from Gutenberg and import it here and turn it into an editable Pressbook. The most common situation is that you or your colleague or somebody has a Word document that they've been writing for years, and it's basically a book, but you need a publishing platform. So here you'd click Word document, you'd click choose a file to upload. I have a Word document that's already ready right here. I'm going to click Open, and then I'm going to click Begin Import. Just as before, it's going to parse that Word document and say, oh, I found a bunch of top-level headings. I think those should be chapters. And I say, great, those should be chapters. Let's bring them all in, and let's bring it in the web book as well. So when I click Import Selection, again, we run through a little routine. In just a few seconds, it imported all of that new content for me, and it's now in my Pressbook and editable for me. If I wanted to view that really quickly, you could see here's the content I just brought in from a Word document. And if I went to the previous chapter, this content is there. I go to another previous chapter. I even was able to put subheaders in, bulleted points. I can make the text appear in columns if I wanted to. And I can have a link. There's lots of different content stuff that we can bring in just natively with Pressbooks. If you want to know a little bit more about this, we have a really extensive guide that covers a lot of Pressbooks topics. That guide lives here, and there is a section about importing from Word. Oops, I did the wrong thing. Importing from Word. And that would be this section in the guide here. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to show about like ways that you can get content in. What I want to do now is I want everybody who wants to follow along with me. This is the chance where Pressbooks, the session will be a little bit more hands-on and interactive if you like. So we're going to go, if you want, you can go to any book that you have access to. In many of your cases, it will be this test book. And we're going to click on Dashboard. Ariana and the people in the room, if you want to follow along, this is a great time to do it. If those of you who are online, you can follow along. Once you land at the Pressbooks dashboard, you'll see something that looks like this. On the left-hand side, usually are a bunch of different options that you can choose from. The very first thing I want to show you is the book info. I think I showed you before, but every book has its own landing page. When you first create a book, the landing page is really simple. It's a title, the lead author, it's a copyright statement, there's a generic cover image, a very vanilla table of contents, and almost no book information or metadata. All of this information on the book's landing page is generated from this book info page here. So if I want to kind of spruce up this book and talk about what it is, I can click book info. Now it's probably not going to work if everyone clicks book info on the same book at the same time, but I will do it here, and if one of you or a couple of you want to look at this, you can. As you can see, somebody's already in this book, so let me find a book that's not going to be rivalrous, and I will do it in that book. Let me jump to the new book that I made for myself. That's why I made it, because no one else is in it. Okay. So if I go to book info, you'll see a bunch of general book information. You'll see the title of the book. That can be edited. I can see a short title. I can also have a subtitle. Learning about OER. And then you'll see a bunch of different attribution statements. Author, editor, translator, reviewer, illustrator, or contributor. This is a way that you can give credit to anyone who's contributed in some way to this book project. The way that you would give someone credit is you would create what's called a contributor entry for them. This is different from making a user account. What's nice about the contributor entry is they don't have to be a user on your Pressbooks network. They don't have to log into Pressbooks. They don't have to have anything to do with Pressbooks except that you've made a contributor entry for them. So I might want to give Ariana some credit for her work on this test book. So all I need to do is add a name, first and a last name, and add a new contributor. And you'll see I've got a new contributor named Ariana Santiago. If I come back to my book info, I can now pick any one of these fields and see, look, I could pick either Steel or Ariana. I'm going to say in this case, Ariana is my reviewer. And Ariana is also a contributor, and so is Steel. And I've begun to add and give credit to people. I can add a publisher. I can add a city. I can add a publication date if I wanted to, the 28th of June. If you issue ISBNs for the ebook or for the printed copy, you can add those. If the library issues DOIs, you can issue a DOI for a book and or a chapter. You can tell the book you can tell the world in metadata what the language of this book is. So for example, we had a Portuguese language textbook. You may have Spanish language text. You may have, any language that the book is written in, you can indicate what language the book is in. You can upload a cover image. You can choose a subject for the book. And the copyright section is pretty important too. So I'm going to say I'm the copyright holder here. And you can choose which license you'd like to apply to your work. For us, it's really important that creators have maximal control over their creation. Many of the creators that work in our field will want to list Creative Commons licenses for their book. They'll say, I want this to be openly licensed and available to others to remix, to revise, or to use in an open way. So in this case, I might say I choose the CC BY license. I had a question also that's relevant here. Arlene asked me in the chat, if you copy a chapter from a book, do you put them in as a contributor or somewhere else? That's a great question. Depends on what kind of role you want to give them. You could list them as a contributor. You could also list them as an author. And I'll show you in a second when we look at the book chapters themselves. You can list authors of individual chapters, and so you can give credit that way too. Right now I'm showing you at the book level, but that's a great question, Arlene. Thanks for asking that. And so I've selected a copyright license, and I could also give a copyright notice. This would appear on the title page of the book. It might say, when citing this book, please give credit to blah, blah, blah. Or whatever I'd like to say about the book. Great question. Pressbooks exports metadata. Justin asked a question about exporting metadata. We do it in a bunch of different ways. We produce what's called schema.org microdata that appears on each of the book's web pages. And you'll also see, for example, once I save this information, all that metadata will show up on the book's homepage. It's also viewable, like with the Zotero connection, you can go and grab it from there. So there's lots of different ways you can get the metadata. They'll be included with the exports. They'll be visible in the head of the HTML, and they'll also be visible on the book's landing page. So hopefully that will give you what you need for minting the DOI. If you have more questions about that, Justin, that's probably one we could take off of this call, because most faculty authors probably won't have detailed questions about DOI and Pressbooks exports. So you can add additional information about your book here. And when you're ready, you could say, okay, I'm ready to save this. I've saved my book information. Now that I've saved that, if I go back to the landing page of the book, you'll notice that the book now has a new Creative Commons license. And here's a lot of the metadata that Justin was asking about. All that information that I just added, the reviewer, author, contributors, the license, the publisher, publication date, that's all been added to the Pressbooks metadata block here. And it's also in the HTML source, if you are curious about that. You'd see it here. You can see there's a whole bunch of meta info in the head. You can see some meta information there. And there's a bunch in, we put it in JSON link data. Okay, I got a little bit in the weeds there, but let me jump back to stuff that's maybe of a little bit more general interest. So that was the book info page. The next thing that you'll want to do is actually add your content or edit content. And here's something that everybody can do together. You click on the Organize menu and you will see an organizable table of contents for your book. Your book will include front matter, it will include back matter, And then it can include as many parts, which are sections, and chapters as you'd like. So what I want everyone to do is in this organize screen, we're going to all add a new chapter. So everyone's going to create a new chapter in your book. To add a new chapter, you can do it lots of different ways. You can click this Add Chapter menu button here, or you can click the Add Chapter button here. We're going to add a chapter. And you're going to give the chapter a title of your choice. So I would suggest using your name and calling it Your Name's Chapter. So if everyone's followed along with me, this is going to be where you do the bulk of your work within Pressbooks. You'll see that this is what we call a what you see is what you get editor. It's a WYSIWYG. It looks a lot like a word processor. If you've used a word processor, or if you've even used WordPress before, this will look really familiar. You can add headings. So I might say heading, I don't know. And then I can add some regular boring content, more boring content. And then I could say, oh, I'd also like to make this word bold. I can make it bold. You know, I can make something italics. I can insert bulleted lists. I can insert numbered lists. I can insert block quotes. So a block quote. And I'd say that's, I think you told me that one time, Ariana, right? Yeah, so there's a block quote that came from Ariana. And then I can insert a link. So if I wanted to link this content to Google or something, I could click the link button and say google.com, and I've just made a link. We have a number of different Pressbooks specific settings. So one thing that I may want to do at the top of my book is insert a text box that gives the learning objectives for this chapter. I'd select the learning objective box, and it's going to insert a pre-formatted text box here. I could say learning objectives for this chapter, or change the text to whatever I want. I'd say, in this chapter, you will learn how to blah, blah, blah. And then add whatever I want for that text box. We support a whole bunch of different text boxes. Each one will have a normal flavor, which is the full width, and they'll also have like a sidebar flavor. And the sidebar would be for a print PDF. It'd be something that kind of displays in the sidebar of your textbook in a way that you might have come to see with other textbook creation kind of tools. So there's a bunch of different text box options that are available: standard, shaded, examples, key takeaways, exercises, etc. There's a bunch of other kind of options. If you're going to be pasting from Microsoft Word, you may want to turn on paste as text so it strips out all of your extra formatting. Or you may want to say, you know, I added some extra formatting, but I want to get rid of it. Bold and italics, I didn't want them. There's a little eraser that will clear the formatting. You just notice that it stripped away my extra formatting there. Another thing that you can do is insert a table. And so there's a little table builder. This is just a standard table builder. I'll make a table that's 3 by 2, and I'll start typing some content in here. You'll see there's a table. And inside the table, I have some choices here where I can say some table properties. Let's make this a shaded table. Now it's a shaded table. Let's make this a lined table. And I can change some of the height, width, and other kinds of elements. So there's some kind of very simple options for creating tables and doing things like that. You can apply a class or create an anchor if you want an internal link. Another thing that you can do is if you're teaching a discipline where you want to give an example of computer code for some reason, like I might say, this is a second level heading in HTML. That's what that would look like, but rather than having it parse as HTML, I can select that text and click this code button, and that will then render this as the HTML code element. So if you're teaching a computer-based discipline or an example where you'd like to show code, that's the way that you mark it as code so it doesn't actually render as whatever you entered it. You can also create footnotes very easily. So in this case, I would just click the footnote button, and I would say, I am a footnote. And you'll notice it makes a little, what's called a short code, and the footnote text is inside of the short code. So I can edit that text. I can make a link inside of that footnote even. And that's how I would have created a footnote. Another thing that I can do is also create a glossary. And the glossary tool is pretty neat in that I would select a term or a word, and I would click the glossary button. And now it's going to say the term is open educational resources, and I would say OER are, I'll just say equals free plus permissions. That's not really a definition, but it's good for our purposes, and I'll say insert. And again, this glossary tool will, oops, maybe I did something wrong. There we go. I created a glossary term. I also can insert lots of other types of content. So for example, I might come to YouTube and say, there's a really great YouTube video about how to use shortcodes in Pressbooks. I grab this URL here, and I come down to Pressbooks, and I paste it on its own line, and Pressbooks will turn it automatically into an embedded video. We can do this with lots of different types of content. For example, there's these really nice PhET simulations. These were built at the University of Colorado. These are often used in the sciences. Like this one teaches, it's an interactive simulation that teaches people about balloons and static electricity. I can show all the charges. I can remove this wall. I can add a wall, add a new balloon. And I don't, I guess I rubbed this over here. I've collected a bunch of negatives. So I'm seeing this happen in real. So I'd say I like that. I want to include that in my book. I grab this URL. I come back to Pressbooks. I give it its own line. And I've just inserted this interactive simulation. So there's a number of pieces of interactive content that you can just simply copy the URL, and Pressbooks will turn it into an embed. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, well, I wonder how my chapter is looking with all of this content. I can preview it, or I can simply create and save it. So if you've been working along and you've made some changes to your chapter, this might be a good time to save or create your chapter. As you've done that, you'll say, okay, I've saved this chapter, but how does it look? I can either view the chapter, or click preview. And now it will show me what my book will look like on the web for a visitor to this book. You'll see here's the chapter title. Here's that top level heading I made. Here's my learning objective box. Here's my link. Here's my sidebar takeaway. I built a table. Here's my footnote. And if I were to click on the footnote, or I'd roll over it, you'll see that I've got that tooltip there. If I click on the footnote, it jumps me down to the footnote. There's my link in my footnote. If I click on this link, it will jump me back to the footnote. There was my example of code. Here's that nice block quote from Ariana. And here's a glossary term. When I click on the glossary term, a little definition will pop up and appear. And I click off of the glossary term, it'll go away. Here's my embedded video. Here's my interactive simulation. Kind of neat, get all those negatives. Let's add another balloon. I don't know what's going to happen. Show the charge differences. And then I reset the data. Okay, so, and there's my list. So that's an example of kind of how you can start with chapter editing in Pressbooks. I know I went really quickly here, so I'd love to open it up and say, okay, what questions do people have initially about editing or creating chapters or adding book info for a Pressbooks title? How do you create sub-chapters within a chapter? That's a great question. Okay. Arlene asked that of me. I'll give it another second to see if other people have other questions, and then I'll probably take Arlene's first. So that was a good question. Okay, so one way that I can do this is through the use of headings. So for example, I could just call this heading 1.1, and I'd come down here, and then I would say, this is going to be a new section of my book down here, and I'll I wouldn't actually call it heading 1.2, but I might say, make that a heading 1.2. So I've got 3 subsections, and I've just saved those. Now, this chapter has 3 top-level headings. If you really want to make them appear as subsections, I'd come to Book Appearance Theme Options, and I would tell this book, enable a 2-level table of contents, which means display the headings under the chapter titles. And I can also set it up in the web book so that those sections start off collapsed. Many people don't do that, but I just want to show it to you. It's in the web options. It's going to say collapsed sections within the chapters. I'll make it wide. So I've just set a couple of simple settings in my book through appearance theme options. Now, when I refresh this chapter, what you'll see is okay. I did something wrong, but I would have collapsible subsections. Oh, I didn't actually save the chapter. That would have been helpful if I'd saved the chapter. Okay, just kidding. How to delete an example text box. That's a great question. So if I made a text box that I don't want, I can select it and I can keep deleting until it's gone. Or sometimes you don't always quite get all of it, so you say, oh, delete, oh, if there's still something there, keep deleting. And if I switch over to the text editor, you'll see there's a little div that's called div class text box. You may not ever want to dig into the HTML, but that's a way to kind of clean up your gunk. But usually you can kind of delete and select it. Oh, that was an accident. I can always click undo and undo until I get stuff back. And maybe I have only a certain number of undos to allow. Okay, so I've made a new heading here. I need to make a new heading. Let's remove this. Let's make a second heading, a third heading, and let's save these changes. So now, in this case, what should have happened is, yeah, okay, great. So I have these 3 subsections for a chapter. When I look at my table of contents as well, you'll see I have a 2-level table of contents as well. So not only will I see the chapter, but I'll see the names of each of my top-level headings in a table of contents. Because they're collapsible, I can collapse and expand them. You don't have to have either of those options on, but that would be one way that you can do what you were asking about, Arlene. Ariana asked about deleting a sample text box, and then Mar just asked in the chat, can I create a new Pressbook using only 1 or 2 chapters from several books, or do I need to clone a whole book? So Mar, the answer is yeah, you can absolutely create a new Pressbook just using piecemeal stuff from many books. So in the case that I just did, I imported 1 Word document and brought in these 6 chapters. I could repeat that process and import another Word document, or import a third Word document, or import a third Pressbook. So you can really make a Frankenstein as long as you have the right import files to do it from. Hopefully that answered that question that you had, Nora. The next thing that I want to show you, I guess if those are the questions that people answered there, is I showed you a little bit about the organized screen, but I didn't actually show you everything you could do from the organized screen. So now that I have all these chapters, another thing that I can do would be add a new part or a new section. And this might be called like section 2. So I've just created a new part. And if I come back to organize, you'll see that the book now has a main body part and a section 2 part. And section 2 is empty. So I might say, you know what, the bug, that belongs in section 2. So I just drag it down there. Steele's chapter also belongs there. And next chapter heading, I actually think that should go between chapter 3 and 5. Gregor and his sister, it goes down here, but it actually goes right before these two, so let me just move it up. Okay, great. I just reordered all of the content in my book. And that's a really nice feature that lets you reorder the content and put things where you want them to go. In addition, you can decide, should this content be visible in the web or should it be private? Should it be included when I make exports or should it not? And you can select those individually, or you can select them all together, like select all, deselect all. So this is a really nice way to say, for example, you might have a chapter that you only want students in your course to see. You don't actually want it to be on the public web. So I might say, oh, great. When I make my export and put it in my Canvas course, that chapter will be there. But when someone just visits the book on the public web, they won't see it. And that's a nice way to kind of keep one book, but do many things with it. You also will notice here that there's this author field, and it's empty for all of them. Someone earlier in the training asked, how do I give credit if I've imported a chapter from someone else's book? Well, this chapter here actually came from Franz Kafka, so I should probably give him credit. So I'm going to click Edit on the chapter. And we saw this big chapter editor over here. What I didn't show you was the content down below. So this is called the chapter metadata. If you want, you can give a customized short title or a subtitle that will appear in various exports, but I can also designate an author here. You remember how we created contributors earlier? This would be a place that I could give Ariana credit as the author of this chapter. And Ariana actually told me that in case of this, the whole book was CC BY, but Ariana wanted her contribution to be CC0, which is even more permissive. So I could apply a license to override the book license at the chapter level. And if you had a chapter DOI, you could enter it there. Once I save this, you'll notice I had one previous revision. And now that I made a save, I've just made 2 revisions. And if I wanted to, let's make some big changes. I'm just gonna. I just really moved that text around and I've made 3 revisions. So now, if I come to browse, you'll see, I can see what the content was initially and what it is now. And the green piece over here will be, oh, this is all new content. The red piece is stuff that's been deleted. So you can see, you can compare the differences. If I want, I could look at revision 1, which was very different. And I can see all those changes and say, hey, you know what? I actually want to go back to the way it was way back before Steel made those damaging changes, and click restore this revision. So this is helpful if you have multiple authors in a book, and let's say you have a grad student who's pretty good but made a mistake and saved the mistake, you can revert back and find those previous revisions and revert back to them. Another option over here is that you can require a password for content, so it would be published to the web, but it would be behind a password. Sometimes that's helpful. For example, if you were to make a textbook and you might have like an answer guide or some key that's available for your graduate assistants or your TAs or someone, you just give the TAs the password and be like, if you enter this password, you'll be able to see this, but it's not going to be visible to the student who doesn't have the password. Or you make a password available to your students, but not to the general public, etc. So those are some of the options that are available there through the status and visibility. You can also pick which part or section the chapter is in there, and a few other things. So that very quickly was a big picture tour of how you do the organized screen and what's possible there. The next thing I want to show you is how you use the glossary feature. So we created a glossary term. If I want to dynamically generate a glossary, all I need to do is click Add Back Matter and select the back matter type called glossary. If I leave this entry blank, then the glossary page will dynamically generate a list of all of the glossary terms that I've designated to use. So I would call this test glossary. Great. So Arlene asked a question. Let me take that question in a second, Arlene. So what I just did was I just generated a test glossary. If I were to view this glossary term, you'd now see, oh, here's that glossary entry that I made in one chapter. I could make multiple glossary entries and they would all just dynamically show up in the glossary list on this page. Arlene's question was, I tried to move things from the front matter to the main body, but it did not work. And back matter as well. That is true. So the reason you cannot move things from front matter to back matter or from front matter to content, because front matter and back matter are special types. They behave a little bit differently than chapters. So you can, if I made multiple front matter pieces, I could reorganize them. Like I could make an abstract or an acknowledgements. I'll do an acknowledgements. I'd like to thank another Patty who made everything possible. So I just published an acknowledgements. This is a front matter type. I can't, as you see, I can't bring this down and make it a main body, but I can reorder it and put it before introduction, for example. So front matter has to stay front matter. Chapters have to stay chapters, but they can be moved to any section. And back matter has to stay back matter. So that's a little bit of how that works, Arlene. You can, of course, if you actually wanted this to be in the main body, you could copy the text and paste, yeah, as you said, you could copy the text and paste it into the chapter, but you can't actually move the content type. Okay, so that's a little bit about content creation. Now I want to show you some of the exciting stuff. Once you get towards a place where you're ready to start sharing your book, you're going to start to say well, I got all the content in, but I want to think about appearance. I want to think about how this book looks and how it feels. The first thing that you can do then is come to appearance and say, I want to pick a book theme. I want it to look a certain way. On your network, we have 20 different premium themes, and they all have different looks and feels and appearances. The one that's active by default is probably McLuhan, but you might say, I really like Atwood, or I really like Austin, or I really like Graham. I can activate that theme, and then when I visit my book, the styling of the typefaces and the chapter headings and all the content will be a little different with this new theme in place. Okay. So now when I went to view a chapter, which was the one we looked at before, Steele's chapter, you'll notice this has a totally different heading style and typeface, and I've applied a different theme at one click and changed the theme. If I don't like it and I want to go back, I can always switch it back to McLuhan. Content will never be affected, but this will affect the look and the feel of the book, both in the web book, in the EPUB, and in the PDF exports. Each theme will also give you a whole bunch of what are called theme options. These are really extensive and you can do a lot of things with them. I'm not going to show them all to you, but I will show you that they're there and that you can customize them. There are a series of options that only apply to the web book, which would be the book you see when you visit the web. The width, how paragraphs are spaced, whether the part title appears, if I collapse the sections or I show linked images in a lightbox. And then the PDF options are really helpful once you start to think about, okay, the book is ready, I want to make a print version. Most of you don't want to take a lot of time and style it to make it page perfect like you might have to do in InDesign. And so we give you a bunch of ready-made PDF options that let you pretty quickly customize how your PDF export's going to look. Here in PDF options in a second, you'll see for this particular book, I'll say, Dan, yes. Is there a way to change font sizes for a theme? Yes. I'll show you a couple of ways to do that, Dan, in just a second. For the PDF export, you can choose the font size here. I can say it's at 9 point right now. I can make it 12. I can choose a line height. I can choose this size of the paper that I want to print on. And then I can select margins, and this will show you the little margin guide. There's a bunch of other kind of printing specific terms and choices that you can make that will help you get your PDF ready. I'm not going to make too much customization here. One way, so here's a book here. There's a couple of options that are available. One's an accessibility option. You can simply click this button to increase the font size. You notice that the font size has just been changed. You can also use your browser default tools and press Command plus or minus to make the book smaller or larger. You'll notice that's rescaling the book. And a third way is if you actually want to change the underlying font size used by the CSS itself, you can do that here with custom styles down. So if I click custom styles, I'm going to see something called CSS. And this is the style sheet that controls the look and the feel of my book. Here's the style sheet that's used by my book theme. I may want to decide that I'd like to change the color and the size of the caption text. So I'd come down here and I'd say, let's make the caption text red, and let's make the font size 20 pixels or something like that. And if I were to save that, it would save a new rule that overrides the book's theme. So I can make a CSS rule or series of rules that apply for the web book. I can also do that for the ebook or for the PDF. So that's kind of how you can alter and customize your book pretty quickly. If you really like a theme, except for one or two pieces, you can do that change there. You do need to know a little bit of CSS, and not everyone will know CSS, so that may be something you go to a network manager for help, or a more knowledgeable web programmer, but it's something that's possible with the tool. The other thing that I would like to show you now is once you're ready to make exports. So just as we try to make it very easy to import content in, we also want to make it very easy for you to produce exports for offline access. You'll know that many of your users, especially if you're thinking about global users, don't always have reliable internet access. And so if you're making truly open content, it should be stuff that they can download and take with them or print or do other things with. So in this case, you'll see here are these dozen different export formats that are available. I'm going to make a print and I'm going to make an EPUB. And that's it for now. And I'll click export this book. So what's happening now is Pressbooks is going through and it's producing an export file based on the content for my book. And it's going to display all of the previous exports I've made in a big list down here below. It will keep the last 3 exports of every one of these file formats that I make. If I want to save a file so it doesn't get overridden by a newer export, I can always pin it and click on that pin button there. What I'll show you here is, without me doing too much configuration and settings changes, you'll have basically a pretty nice looking print-ready PDF. It's taking about a minute here to do the full export because I'm sharing my screen and doing the video, but usually exports run really quickly. While I'm at it, I'll also show you, you may have noticed that some books, some Pressbooks, have the downloads available from the book's homepage. To do that, you'd come to Settings, Sharing, and Privacy, and you would click Share Latest Export Files, Yes. This means that now, if I've checked that option and I visit my book, anyone who visits the homepage of the book will now see a download this book link and will see available file formats that they can download from the book's homepage without being logged in, just as a visitor to the site. If I wanted to view that print PDF, I can download it here and I'll just show you how my Pressbook book looked. There we go. You can see Ariana and I made this book. It's got a title page, table of contents. It's a nicely formatted table of contents. You can see all of my next level headings. You can see the section. It's pretty nice looking. I made the typeface pretty big here, but it's nice if you have an older reader, I guess. And you'll see here's my book. It's ready to print. It's a PDF that's ready to print. Looks pretty nice, I think. And you'll notice I had a video element. Whenever we have interactive content that can't be exported, Pressbooks will try to make a graceful fallback. It will show you a screenshot and it will say, there was a YouTube element. We can't put a YouTube video in a PDF, so click on this link and you'll take you to the page where the interactive content lives. And that is how you make a PDF that could be printable or even print on demand for your users. There's also a cover generator tool. I'm not going to show you that in detail, but you can use that to design a cover for your book and make a print-ready cover. If you don't have great graphic design skills, a lot of people use that and it makes it really easy to make a nice looking cover. I don't see any other new questions there. So I want to pause for a second and ask if anyone has other questions about appearance, like the theming, or the exports. Yes. Okay, Arlene asked me, will we talk about Blackboard export? So I can, Ariana, if you'd like me to cover that, or if that's something you'd like to save for a future session, let me know what you'd like to do.
Go ahead and explain the capability, because that's something that I think we're definitely interested in
okay.
Implementing. Yeah.
Great. So if you'd like, you can take a Pressbook title and import it as a series of links into your LMS. And I understand in Houston's case you use Blackboard. I don't have access to your Blackboard instance. I do have access to my old Wisconsin Canvas instance. So I'll basically show you how it would work in Canvas, but the principle will be the same for Blackboard. So apologies there. When you're ready, you'd say, okay, I have a book. I'm going to click Common Cartridge 1.3 LTI links, and then you click Export Your Book. This will give you a common cartridge file. You then come into your LMS. You come into your course, and I'll do it in Canvas here. And yeah, Ariana's still working on setting this up. So this would be a future thing that you could do. I don't know exactly her timeline or their timeline, but I expect probably fall semester would be a reasonable time to expect that. I'd come to a course, and then I would come to settings. In your mileage will vary a little bit in Blackboard, but you'd say import course content, and it will ask you what kind of content, and you would say common cartridge package. This is it's a generally accepted standard that all LMSs will use. And then we'll pick the file that we just downloaded. Your interface will look a little bit different, but the process will be the same. You grab the common cartridge that I just downloaded, you click import, it will bring the file, it will bring the book into your LMS, and then what you'll see would be something that looks like this. Each one of these modules is a part or a section in your Pressbook, and each one of these links is front matter or a chapter. When a user clicks on the chapter, what they'll see is the actual content, the live Pressbook, is loading in the LMS as though it were native to the LMS. So the student thinks they're still in Blackboard or thinks they're still in Canvas, but they're seeing a live Pressbook here. And so you can have your modules set up so that you have a chapter of your book. You could be like, you know what, I don't actually want to use this chapter after, I'll get rid of it. And I want to put this chapter, I want to reorder it, put it up in module 1, and I want to publish it. And this one I'm going to put down in module 2, and then I'm going to create a quiz or a discussion forum, and I'll put those in between the chapters. So the book is just like a spine in the backbone of your course. When you view the content itself, the learner then is experiencing it as though it were part of the course. They have the forward and next button navigation in the LMS. And if you want, I'm going to start showing you some of the cool advanced features. If I were to turn the hypothesis tool on, I'd be able to let the students do live annotation in a private layer or in the public group. We could have a class conversation or an annotation discussion right on the text. This is happening on the live Pressbooks in the LMS. And so I could put images and videos and links in this annotation layer. I could have a really rich conversation about the reading or about the textbook, just right built into the book, right in the LMS. So that's the cool part with the LMS integration. And for me at Wisconsin, this was the stuff that I really geeked out about. And I got so excited to see, like, finally I could have my content in context with an annotation layer, with interaction, with multimedia, with all the kinds of things that I really wish I could have delivered in textbooks that I had to really break up piecemeal previously. So coming back to Pressbooks, the last couple of things I'll show you are some of these more advanced or more sexy educational features. You'll also see at your book level this plugins option. And there's going to be a few plugins that you can activate to turn on some cool features. H5P is one of them. I'm going to activate that one. That's my favorite one. There's one called Parse Down Party. That lets you use a Markdown editor if you prefer to write in Markdown. If you haven't heard of Markdown before, that's okay. Many people haven't. If you have heard of it, you probably know what it is and you like it. You can activate that and it will replace our WYSIWYG editor with a Markdown-based editor. Table Press will let you build interactive tables. I'm going to turn that one on and I'll show you that one. And then WP Quick LaTeX, I'll turn that one on. That lets you do some advanced math notation. We have built-in support for math notation, and we're very close to building in native support for MathJax, but this just gives you a couple of other math LaTeX export options for your book. I'm going to start with H5P because I think it's the most exciting, and we've got about 5 minutes left. Yes, hypothesis will work with Blackboard, Justin. Now, what's going to happen is the hypothesis is actually connected to Pressbooks, so the students will have to create their own hypothesis accounts if you want them to make annotations. But if you just want them to view or read annotations, it'll just work out of the box. You'll notice for each of your books, you'll need to configure hypothesis for the book. And so we'll say settings hypothesis. And here you'll need to say, I want to allow hypothesis on parts, chapters, front matter, and back matter. When I do that, what will happen, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but when I do that, now when I visit the book, the user, when they visit a chapter, the hypothesis tool will be built in and visible for them, even without a browser extension. It's just baked into Pressbooks. And that would be true if it's in the LMS or just on the open web, which is a really nice feature. Justin also asked, can you import LaTeX to Pressbooks? And the answer is yes, you can. So you can bring LaTeX in. There's a couple of different ways to do LaTeX and to do mathematical expressions. The easiest way is just to use a shortcode, a LaTeX shortcode. So I think there's a chapter in our guide. Here we go. There's a really detailed section in our guide. I know we're coming pretty close to time, so thanks, Reed, for joining us. I appreciate you joining us, and if others have to leave, I'll try to wrap this up at 3. but I do want to show you a couple more of the real exciting educational features. If I come back to plugins, which book am I in? Oh, wait. If I'm in a book where H5P has been activated, I can come down in the dashboard and actually make new H5P content. If you're not familiar with H5P, let me kind of give you a little demo. H5P are interactive content types. There's about 40 different content types that you can make. They're built in HTML5 and they tend to be accessible to users. They're replacements for the old Flash-based activities that a lot of us used to see in the 90s and early 2000s. And you can see like there's a multiple choice quiz activity. You can build a course presentation with interactive elements. You can bring in a YouTube video and add quizzing on top of it. You can do a drag the words, fill in the blanks. Basically any type of cool interactive content you can imagine for learning, you can build with H5P. And to create one, you can either make a new one or you can import an already created one. I happen to have a file on my computer that's of a really cool flashcard activity. Somewhere on here. Maybe I don't. Let me go grab one then. So for example, you might see on someone else's book. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry about this. Live demos, huh? Is this the one? Probably not. Okay, let's pretend like I did that successfully. Let's come back and let's just make a new one. We're going to come to create content and we're going to do a image hotspots activity. They're going to show me on their website a demo activity. And I'll say, oh, I really like this cool image hotspots where I can have annotated images. Each of these H5P activities are themselves openly licensed and reusable. So I could say reuse and download the source file. Now I can come to my site and upload this file and just add it to my site directly and then edit it. Or I can make a new one. In this case, I'm just going to add this already created one just so you can see the H5P builder very fast. So here I've just made an image hotspot. We'd add a background image. We'd define the hotspots. We'd put it on the text and we'd give it some text. We'd say it's a video, it's text, it's something else. And we publish this particular activity. So I've made my first H5P activity. And it's an annotated hotspot activity. When I'm ready to insert this in my book, I come back to the organize screen and you'll see at any chapter, there'll be a little button that lets me add H5P activities. So here, I'll click add H5P and I'll be able to choose from any of those interactive activities that have been made in my book and just insert them into the book. When I preview the book, the H5P activity will be interactive and live in the live book. And a student could do this activity. They could take a quiz. They could do flashcards. They could practice speaking. All these really rich interactive content types all live there, can be created there. The same thing is true with Table Press, which lets you build interactive tables. I don't have time to demo it today, but hopefully it's given you a little bit of a flavor or a taste for some of the exciting interactive stuff that you can do. All of this that I've talked about in the training today and more is covered in our guide. And you can always reach out to your network managers, Ariana, who can provide more information. And she can always reach out to us at Pressbooks if she has additional questions. Basically, that's the kind of tour of Pressbooks and the initial training that I wanted to give. Hopefully, it felt like it moved at an okay pace for everyone and you got the chance to dig in and do a little bit yourself. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions here in the chat. I know it's about time for folks to leave, but I can take questions in the chat or take them live now if you want before we wrap up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steel. That was great. I know we've had a few people have to leave us early, but there are still a handful of people here. So feel free to add questions in the chat or let me know if you have questions. And you have a few minutes, Steel, in case people have questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can wait for a few more minutes. And I know we went through a lot there, so I appreciate everybody's patience. And just ready to answer questions. Okay, great. So Justin asked, am I aware of any well-run, very well-run print-on-demand programs run out of a university library? So yes, I think there's a couple of, I don't know whether, I'm not 100% sure if they're run out of university libraries. There's a couple of different ways that people can approach this. So I've seen BC Campus has done a lot of really interesting stuff, and they make nice print copies of most of their books. That's in the province of British Columbia. They're like a provincial organization that oversees higher ed kind of generally, or coordinates it. And then Open Oregon is a similar organization out of Oregon, and Amy Hofer is the librarian who runs that, H-O-F-E-R. The different print-on-demand models that I've seen are either they produce the PDF exports in a kind of standard way, and then they have a distribution program either with a on-campus print shop, or they work with a large print partner, whether it's Lulu or Ingram Spark or someone else like that. And when you do print on demand, there's a couple of options there. One would be you can give them the print files and you can order a certain number of print copies, usually at a very low price. So like you can make a 200-page soft cover book for something like $3 a copy. And you order, say, 200 of them, and then you can sell them at cost or sell them slightly above cost if you need to sustain a program. That's one way to do it, but it requires you to have some upfront capital. The other way that I've seen people do it would be to say, we add the files to the production engine, and then we let people go and buy a copy print on demand either through Amazon or Ingram or whatever. If that's what you in fact want to do that way, there is this little tool here on your book that says publish. If you've listed your book at any one of those places, you can add a URL that would let someone go to that host and buy the book. A lot of times that's more commonly done for the ebook purchasing, which isn't really relevant for OER, but in some cases you could do that for the print book and have someone purchase on a print on demand that way. Or you can just do it directly with the print on demand service and list it on their website. They do take a chunk of those profits and the cost, so it's a bit more expensive when a person buys print on demand than when the publisher buys direct and then resells. But that's what I know about that, I think, Justin. Justin, you must be a librarian. Is that a correct guess?
So at least from our in-person group here, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of questions coming up. So, oh wait, we do have a question. Hold on.
It looks like it's better to do a table press. It looks like there's more options that you can do a table through table press than through insert table. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, table press is really powerful and very cool. Like you can do filterable, sortable tables that just become flat tables upon export. So if I was working with tables, I would almost certainly do table press. And table press, like I didn't show it in the demo, but it's got 1.5 million options and choices and settings. So it's got its own guide basically that runs with that. But if I were imagining doing tables of some kind, table press is probably the way that I would go. Yeah. And then when you build a table with table press, it will just give you a little short code for each table, and you can just copy and paste that into the book, and it will insert the table wherever you ask it to go. There is a chapter in the guide about that, and there's probably even a video. We have a lot of videos. I should include that link there for people as well. We have a lot of training. It's like self-paced training videos at our YouTube channel. Let me grab those. Yeah, have faculty ever asked about integrating proprietary homework software into their books? Yes and no. So generally my view is a lot of courseware doesn't play, like you can't really integrate it. It's like you log into this separate website and then you go do the homework there and students pay for access codes. I'm going to just speak for myself and say that I think that's outrageous. And the idea would be you should be able to make Pressbooks courseware with H5P and other kinds of things, so that if desired, you could replace the proprietary homework platform as well. But I suppose technically or theoretically, if that homework platform supported iframes, you could whitelist them and drop the iframe in Pressbooks, I suppose. But I haven't seen that happen a lot. Usually they tend to be standalone systems. So you could make a Pressbook as the spine, as you saw before, and have links out to the homework platform in between in the LMS, which I know a lot of people do. I'm not sure what else a homework software integration would look like, but most of the people that we're working with are working with open tools. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the, so Justin, I think honestly, one of the things that stops a lot of faculty from adopting is I could replace the textbook, that's fine, but I've also got this homework platform and this homework system that really saves me a lot of time. And do you have a homework platform that accompanies this new textbook? And in many cases, the answer is no, but now with H5P and other things, hopefully we're hoping the answer will increasingly be like, yeah, sure. So it'd be really cool to see people at different institutions adopt a really great open textbook, and their contribution is they build, or they collaborate on building a question bank so that you'd have a homework replacement. And that could be your remix, and then you give that back into the commons. And that's, I think, a really exciting future direction.
Cool. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap up. I want to thank you again, Steel. This was really great. And you'll probably be getting more questions from me.
That sounds awesome, Ariana. It's been a pleasure to work with everybody, and I appreciate your patience. And thanks for letting me go over a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
All right, sounds great. Talk to you soon.